Jericho 98. I think those of you who've heard us during the last months as we worked up to the march in of itself, one of the things we tried to get over to people over and over again is that Jericho 98 is not just about a march, it's about building a movement around our political prisoners and prisoners of war, to educate the people about the fact that they exist, to demand amnesty and freedom for our political prisoners, to create an atmosphere where we can wage struggle around all the other issues that affect us, with the knowledge that we are building an institution around political prisoners that, if in fact and when it's dealt with, that it would also free us up to do the work that we need to do of freeing our communities, dealing with our struggles against imperialism, colonialism, and against racism and all the other issues that affect us in our community, and not be afraid to do this, not be concerned about if we get arrested, whether or not there will be someone to speak up for us, someone to make sure that we have an attorney, someone to make sure that we get adequate medical care and all the other things that political prisoners, people who go to jail as a result of their participation in struggles in this country, need to have taken care of. One of the things that we try to get across to people over and over again is that these political prisoners didn't come out of a vacuum, that the fact that they were in prison all of these years, and some of them almost 30 years, and people have forgotten that they're there, people don't even know where they are, people don't know the conditions, and a lot of times don't know their names, is a result of the whole COINTELPRO plan that was put in the 60s, where they said that they was going to make sure that the youth of today, that the youth recognize and be clear on that it's more important, it's better for them to be anything but to be a revolutionary. And the reason why, and they succeeded in that, because we still have those political prisoners like Aranza Bowers, that people don't even know what he looks like, people don't know his name, didn't even know he was in prison since the early 70s. And just within 18 months or more that we've been doing the Jericho work, people have begun to raise the issue of Aranza Bowers. By the same means, the cases of people like Ed Poindexter and Mondo Langa, David Rice, formerly known as David Rice, out of Lincoln, Nebraska. People didn't know their names. People beginning to ask the question, what is happening with their case? Eddie Conway, the Puerto Rican nationalists, Yuki Kimura, all the North American anti-imperialists who were there. In some cases, like for instance, people know the name of Assata Shakur, but didn't know the names of the people who were responsible for her freedom. And at least 4 of those people are in prison, doing long time. People did not know that Sylvia Baradini was one of the names that should have been raised when they raised the name of Assata Shakur. People didn't know that Susan Rosenberg was a name that should have been raised when they raised the name of Assata Shakur. And you go on and on. So we, in the initial phases of Jericho, talked about bringing the youth out. And I'm happy to report the youth was at Jericho 98. They were at the march in Washington, overwhelmingly. But what that speaks to is not only they were out, that we have to look at in terms of the fact that those of us who've been in the struggle for 30 years, like myself, and 80 years, like the good brother right here. Well, anyway, not quite 80. Quite 80. But we, it feels like 80, I know. But those of us who have been in the struggle all these years, we're getting older. And we have to educate and empower our youth so they can carry the struggle on. We can't run the laps that we used to run. I know I can't. I can't speak for the rest of you, but I can. And we have to find other people to do the speaking, to go out there and organize, to educate the youth, because we need the youth to educate other youth and take that load and carry it on. And so the fact that they were in the 80% or more of the people that were at Jericho 98 at the march in Washington on the White House were the youth. So we can no longer say, where are the youth? And we can no longer denounce the youth because they're not involved and they're not doing anything progressive, because they came and the majority of us did not go. So the youth, if nothing else, the Jericho 98 brought out the youth, and we have to go and find a way to work with them and enhance and so they can carry on. And we have to train them and teach them, maybe not train them and teach them, because some of us are still not dealing with each other. I mean, they seem to have a more better job way of dealing with themselves than we have of dealing with each other. But maybe we can learn something from the fact that they were out, and they used new ways of organizing to get them out, and we can learn from that. Then the other part of it was the multiculturalness of the moment. I think that one of the things that people keep talking to me about when they call from all over the country is that march when it's coming down the hill, and they keep talking about this hill, and I have to see it because I didn't see it because somebody didn't relieve me. I was in the hotel room answering the telephone when the march was going on, and they forgot I was there. And nobody came to relieve me to 12 o'clock. I wanted to get that out. You know, I really wanted to complain about that because I didn't get to see the march. So I'm going to have to watch the videotape like everybody else to see what that march looked like. But I've been told when those people came across the hill, the rainbow of faces, and that was the most perfect moment, and that was what we should put forth as when we talk about Jericho, that moment is what people should see. Because it had the spirit of Jericho. It has the spirit of people and the youth and everybody going, charging, to doing the free and political prisoners with the slogan, and they embodied that when they're coming over that hill. And the people, I remember I was in a place getting some food the next night, and the people were saying that, talking about what had happened. It's just not people that were involved in the march, but people who saw it, and they were talking about yesterday they had the Jericho march, and then that was and they were talking about how spectacular it was, and they were talking, but they remembered Jericho, and they remembered that it was about political prisoners. The other thing that, and I'm talking since then, the march itself, the demonstration itself, it was awesome in the fact that so many people from so many places. I was in the hotel room that Tuesday when I got there, and we had opened up the office, and this woman came in with some other reporting news people who was doing some videotaping for Deep Ditch, and they wanted to get their press passes. And this woman came in and she was sitting there at the thing, and she had come all the way from Hawaii, and she said that she had early on scheduled her vacation to be at Jericho. So this woman, a vacation, I mean, who leaves Hawaii and comes to Washington, D.C. for a vacation? I mean, that's where we go for vacation. And Jericho was the issue, not coming to Washington, D.C., but use her vacation time to come to a march demanding amnesty and freedom for political prisoners. And she did that. And to me, that set the tone for how everything else that happened that week around Jericho. The calls that came in from all over the country still to try to find out what, and then finally how to get there, what to do, telling us how far they were, and the caravan. Dennis Banks and his caravan from San Francisco, when they were in St. Louis, they called and let us know they were in St. Louis, and they were on their way. And then as they got close, every time they would call in where they were, and so we can get that they were on their way in. And then I was in the hotel room again. This is all the night before, the days leading up to it. And this young sister I had been talking to for doing it all these months long, organizing from San Diego. Her name was Naima Shabazz, and she was the Pan-African Students Association, and she was the vice president of it out there. And so I'm standing in the doorway to the room, and somebody comes charging and screaming and hollering down the hallway, and I'm trying to figure out who do I hide behind, because I don't know this ball of fire that's coming down the hallway. And it's this sister, she grabs me and she hugs me and tears are screaming out her face. And she says, Sally was there. She didn't see me backing up trying to get away from this. But she says that she finally can put faces on the people that have been talking to her all these months that she was working with. And she hugged and she was just so excited. And to come to find out this is a second generation Panther. Her father had been a member of the party and he was dead. And she was carrying on the struggle, and at the same time she was about the political prisoner issue, and at the same time she's about making a connection with her history and her past, you know? And so these moments when I finally got relieved and went out to the site itself for the demonstration, and I walked up on it, and I saw I'm getting out of the taxi because I'm running real late. They already speak, I missed 3 speakers. And anyway, I get there, and these people are coming into the park. There's nothing but people. And there's a sea of people as I come in. And I walk through, and I'm amazed about all of these faces I know and the faces I don't know, and the youth orientation of the crowd. And then there was this brother that I hadn't seen since before I went to prison and when I was under. And he was determined to find out this brother was a brother that I'd worked with when we was in the party in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was there, and I'd been talking to him all these months also, and he turns out to be the one who's organizing and head of the Abdul Haq Defense Committee in Cleveland, Ohio. So the connections are there, and the connections were made. And since that time, I think the report that has to come back since that time is we've been getting calls all over the country about where do we go from here? How do we make Jericho, the next year's work of Jericho, the direction we need to take, the better organized and the better to put it into place? Smooja Shakur, the Jericho Organizing Committee out of San Francisco, she made some suggestions that we reorganize the National Steering Committee of Jericho so that it be more reflective of the work that's going on and who's doing the work. I agree with that. Herman and I can't continue to carry the burden of the work around, the national work around Jericho. In order for it to continue and go in the direction it needs to go into and be fleshed out, we need to have a working steering committee. A working steering committee is going to shoulder responsibility of carrying out the projects that we have to deal with. And then the Albany Jericho Committee, they've been meeting. They said it's Albany, it's about 5 or 6 of them, but they have some ideas about having a newsletter that continues to carry out what the work that has to be done and keep us all in touch with each other and keep the information going, flowing back and forth. The other thing he suggested is that we don't forget them. And one of the things, if we deal with the work, take the time to build it correctly, all of these Jericho organizing committees that are in existence will continue to exist, but will have concrete work to be done. Kazi Torre called from Boston, the Jericho Organizing Committee up there, and he was insisting that we don't leave them out of the loop because they are there to do work. And Nzinga Conway out of Baltimore, Eddie Conway Committee, called in and reported, and she says, I know, and that was just last night, the message is on the machines, I know that the hard work of the march is over, but the real work of Jericho has to begin now. And it's over and over, and that's not to say that they're not criticisms. There are criticisms. There are things that were not done perfectly, but if we work together in unity, and we know that we have what we're up against, we know we have a common enemy, we know the political prisoner war question is a question that all of us have to work on, then we can do what's necessary to make the changes and grow and be sensitive to each other and our contradictions that we may have and push the work forward. I think that maybe I can go on and on and on, but I think that's more important than that is that at some point in the very near future, we have to sit down as a New York Jericho Organizing Committee, not as the National Jericho Organizing Committee, because we're not the national. We're the New York Jericho Organizing Committee. And all the other committees all across the country are going to be doing the same thing. And then at some point in time, one of the things that came over the email 2 days ago was an email from Kim Holder and Joy James. Both of them are professors at colleges. And Joy James, if anybody recently had the Unfinished Liberation Conference out at Boulder, Colorado. And Kim Holder was one of the facilitators, helped put that together, and he also worked with us and offered his services to Jericho 98. And one of the things they suggested is, and they made offer to us, is to facilitate a conference next year for Jericho around the issue of how do we solidify the work around political prisoners. And I wanted to bring that to us because they have the resources to facilitate it. Jericho has no money. So I wrote them an email back and said, it's a great, great idea. We talked about the need to come together at some point. We don't have the resources, but if you have the resources to pull it off, I'll bring it back to people and see, because we'd gladly accept it if you do the work of putting it together for us. And the resources are there. On the college campuses, they have the resources, and if people are willing to make those resources available, I'm behind it 100%. And with that, on that note, you know that we're going to have a discussion open discussion after we see the video. You know we're going to have reports from the committees, and And after the report from the committees, after the video, we will open the floor for you all, because this is an interactive session. This is a session that we've been waiting for a while. It's not as many people as we hope to have here, but it's enough to begin a discussion. Thank you.